Welcome back to Achieving Optimal. I'm Tommy Newberry. In this week's episode, I want to share with you 5 questions that I think will help you be more effective in the coming weeks and the coming months. I love questions because questions shape your thinking. So I've got 5 for you that I use with clients. If not every day, I certainly use them every week, especially with my one-on-one clients. And if you subscribe to this podcast or you come to my events, read my blogs, etc., you'll get a steady dose of great questions that will enhance your thinking. And if they enhance your thinking, it's going to enhance your life. So before I get to those 5 questions, I want to remind you of the power of questions. Questions are very powerful because we're constantly asking them of ourselves. So as a coach, as your coach, I'm asking questions to help you get to the next level, to help you upgrade. But even when I'm not around, when you're not plugged into me, you're still asking and answering questions inside your own head. Even when you're alone, you're asking and answering questions inside your own head. And if you get into the habit of asking productive questions, then even when I'm not around, you're in the car, you're by yourself, you're not even listening to anything, then what's going to happen is there's going to be this internal dialogue where you're asking a productive, useful question, and then you're answering it. And then you get in this loop that is highly productive, highly effective for driving your entire life, whether it's on the personal side or the business side, to the next level. So questions redirect your thinking from something okay to something excellent. They steer your focus toward productive aims. Think about this. They also have a displacement value. Strong questions push out or displace weak questions, and that is a valuable benefit in and of itself, that if you find yourself with some stinking thinking, you find yourself feeling sorry for yourself, you find yourself overly agitated, if you get in the habit, if you train yourself to ask quality questions, you can fight off that negativity that usually is brought about by asking the wrong type of question. Some people drive themselves into discouragement, if not worse, by asking self-defeating questions. And we don't want to do that. I want to flip it today, give you some ammunition so you can really crush your goals as the year progresses. Productive questions spawn additional productive questions. So I'm going to share 5 with you in just a second, but those 5 will probably make you think of additional questions on your own, because when I'm on the phone or I'm doing a Skype call with clients or I'm in front of a group, I'm asking questions, and then sometimes I have my questions planned, but then I ask a couple of questions and it makes me think of new questions, and the same thing is going to happen to you. I don't know if you have a copy of my book, 40 Days to a Joy-Filled Life, but whether you do or you don't, I want to highlight a certain section. It's page 213, and the title of the chapter is called What's Your Goal? What's your goal? And hint, hint, that's question number 1 of my coaching question. What's your goal? But I'm going to do something maybe odd. I don't think I've ever done it before. I'm going to read from my own book for this podcast, not the entire podcast, but just for a little section. So listen up. If you want to follow along, grab your book, page 213, 40 Days to a Joy-Filled Life. We have all been in situations where we've almost enjoyed wallowing in negative emotions. We nurse a grudge against someone who said something hurtful, or we sulk in response to being disappointed. But what is the end result? Will acting on the negative emotion move us in the direction of our highest good? Will that negative emotion bless those closest to us? Will it help us reach our goals? In a marriage spat, for example, is the goal to be right, or is the goal to be happy? What's your goal? What's your goal? I bombard my clients with this question for the purpose of activating their God-given reason and conscience, thereby enhancing their spontaneous decision-making. Your goal, so you ask yourself, what's my goal? I'm ad-libbing here now. So your goal is going to be a filter that's going to eliminate words, behaviors, and other emotional responses that conflict with it. So if you get good at asking questions, you're going to not only deflect negative thoughts, but that's going to help you push away negative emotions as well, and that's even more powerful. So by asking the question, you're going to, if it's a productive question, you're going to make better micro choices all day long. And I've really been emphasizing the concept of micro choices recently because we make so many small choices every single day and we don't notice them, but they add up little bit, just a little bit at a time. You don't really see the consequences of one choice, a small choice, but then over time, those small choices, those micro choices add up. All right, so back to the book. Your goal should act as a filter, eliminating words, behaviors, and other emotional responses that oppose it. As a parent, for example, your emotional responses can be tempered by a clearly stated parenting goal, such as communicating love, not impatience, to your children, that weeds out irresponsible parental reactions regardless of their apparent justification. And as you know, if you're a parent, we are often justified. Certainly, you will have negative triggers in your life from time to time. Fortunately, God has provided a little gap of opportunity for His most valuable creation. This tiny space between the stimuli and your response to it gives you a chance to think before you react. We are the only creatures that He's given that to. This will shape not only your potential for joy, but also your destiny as a human being. So again, what's your goal? What's your goal? What's your goal? Ask that inside your head. What is your goal? I could change that up a little bit because I want you, when you're saying it, you're driving along in the car, what's my goal? You're working out, what's my goal? You're in the shower, what's my goal? In other words, don't just not think about anything. Don't let the radio, don't always let music or social media or external noise drive your thinking. You drive your thinking by thinking about your goals. I used to say, and I still say this a lot, think about your goals, think about your goals. But what is really a better communication device is to say, what's your goal? What's your goal? Because oftentimes clients will be either face-to-face with me or they'll be over the phone and they'll be fighting with this decision. They're not sure what to do. And you know what I almost always come back to? It's what's your goal? What's your ultimate goal? Because if I can get my clients focused on their goal, almost obsessed with their goal, but very, very clear on their goal, then it makes the decision-making in the current moment or the present day, whatever they're dealing with right now, it makes it a lot easier. I have found that decision-making is very, very difficult if we're not clear on what our goal is. That's why I say it over and over and over again. And in order to train yourself, I want you to ask this question over and over and over again during your commute time for the next week. In other words, if nobody's in the car with you, or if somebody is and you're not talking, you can mutter it under your breath. But I want you to find, if it's not in your car, maybe it's during the first 10 minutes of your exercise routine, or you're in your shower, but I want you to ask this question, what's my goal? What's my goal? What's my goal? I want you to ask it about 1,000 times in the next week. You can do it, it's real easy. And then here's one variation to it. So you're dealing with a particular circumstance. Maybe it's an argument, maybe it's a big decision, maybe somebody has presented you with an opportunity, maybe you're at a turning point, and then you just add a word to the end of that question. What's my goal here? What's my goal here? Such as in the marriage example, what's my goal here? To be right or to have harmony in the relationship? It's a good question, right? It's a good question. All right, now, closely related to that, but slightly different, is probably the first question that I realized was powerful even before the goal question. I don't think it's more important than the goal question, but it's one that I was taught early in my career, and I had postcards made up. I used to fax people with this question. I would call them and leave them a voicemail and just ask them this question. Then I would start emailing them with this question. I mean, it was my go-to question for many, many years. And here it is. What's the most valuable use of my time right now? So I'll ask it of you. What's the most valuable use of your time right now? And that, of course, is watching this podcast, right? Or listening to this podcast. But here's what you do. You ask this question over and over again throughout the day to make sure that you're engaging in the highest and most valuable activity, the activity that is congruent with your goal or the goal that you're moving toward or the reason that you're doing what you're doing in the first place. Constantly check yourself. And if you're like me, the first 1 or 2 times that you ask this question, what's the most valuable use of my time right now? You always will answer with the activity that you're currently doing. And it's a fraud. I mean, most times it's a fraud because generally we start to drift. We start to drift a little bit. And so we say, what's the most valuable use of my time right now? And when we say that, it's like a catch. It's a wall. It's a firewall that prevents us from getting too far off track. So if we ask this throughout the day, then it'll constantly be tugging us back on track. You know, just like a coach kind of pulling you into the right position on the field, or somebody gently nudging you and reminding you, stay focused, stay focused, stay focused. But I'm telling you, I'm a pretty focused person. And if I don't ask that question over and over and over again, I can lie to myself, like you probably do, and I will say that what I'm doing right now is the most valuable use of my time. And it's often, that's not the most valuable use of your time. I mean, sometimes the most valuable use of your time is working, doing something business-wise. Sometimes the most valuable use of your time is going for a workout or taking a break or sending a text to a loved one or praying. Oftentimes, though, when you're in the work environment, we drift toward the things that are third in importance or second in importance. So the purpose of the question, think it in your head, what's the most valuable use of your time right now? What's the most valuable use of my time right now? The purpose of that is to steer us back on to message, to steer us back online with our goal. Now, a variation to this is the third question, and it's I don't like it quite as much, but it's pretty good, and because it's an acronym and it's WIN, W-I-N. What's important now? And I don't think it's quite as strong as what's the most valuable use of my time right now, but you could argue that it is because it's so succinct and it's got the cool acronym, what's important now, which spells out WIN. I remember when my oldest son, Ty, was in the 1st or 2nd grade, and I wanted to help him stay focused. At Parents' Night, before Parents' Night, I had a bunch of business cards made up, and I had them printed with what's important now, and then I put WIN in parentheses underneath it. And then I went in and on Parents' Night, and I stuck a whole bunch of them in his desk so that he would eventually see them. And I gave some to his teacher, and I stuck some in his book bag so that whenever he saw it, he would think of me and remember our conversations about goals and focus and staying on point and doing what you need to do. So ask yourself early and often, what's important now? What's important now? Because whatever the answer was to that an hour ago, it may not be true now. Certainly whatever the answer was yesterday may not be true now. So the first one was, what's your goal? First coaching question that I use over and over again. Second one is, what's the most valuable use of your time right now? The third one is, what's important now? And then a more recent question for me, but one that means a lot to me, is very simple. It's 3 words. Is it optimal? Is it optimal? Is it optimal? Or is this optimal, if you want to change it up just a little bit? But the reason that is so profound, I believe, is because we often settle for okay. It's like there's a funny set of commercials, AT&T, I believe, and it's like, just okay is not okay. Maybe you've seen those commercials. I love them. I've opened up talks and workshops with them. Just okay is not okay, but sometimes we get used to things being, as long as they're not bad, we accept them. Like, a doctor will hand you your blood work and you'll say, Doc, how's the blood work look? And he'll go, it's fine. No, you want to come back to him and say, is it optimal? What would be optimal? Is it optimal? That's the way you raise your standard. Is it optimal? Another medical thing, I don't want to pick on doctors now, but they allow you so far to, as you get older, to get fatter. They have a range that says, hey, if you're 30, you can be this fat. If you're 40, you can be a little bit fatter. If you're 50, you can be a little bit fatter. It's based on some averages and statistics and things like that. The truth is, most of us know now, is if you're going to be fat, it's better to be fat when you're younger than when you're older. So what's the point? There's some things that are suboptimal and there's some things that are optimal, and you want to always be moving toward optimal with how you run your life, with what you're eating, with what you're thinking, with how you're interacting with your spouse. Is it optimal? Say that in your head right now. Is it optimal? Is this optimal? Is this optimal? When you prepare for a presentation, when you're getting ready for a meeting, when you've just had a conversation with your teenager, you want to think through what happened or what you're about to do and ask, is this optimal? What could I do to make it optimal? Okay, so that's the fourth question. The fifth one is a little bit longer, but it's very powerful. It's a little more strategic, and here it is. What's the number one thing you could be doing that if you did it consistently would have the most positive impact on your life? It's kind of a mouthful, isn't it? What's the number one thing you could be doing that if you did it consistently would have the most positive impact on your life? What is it? All right, so that's kind of a long question. It's in the show notes. You can get all these five questions in the show notes, but that is a question that you really can't escape or avoid or wiggle out of. If I ask you that, you've got to give me a pretty strong answer, and it will ricochet inside your head for the whole week. What's the number one thing that you could be doing? So that implies you're not currently doing it, right? What's the number one thing you could be doing that you're not currently doing that if you did it, not once, but if you did it consistently, would have the most positive impact on your life? What is that? So we could tailor that. We could say, what's the number one thing that you could be doing that you're not currently doing that if you did it consistently would have the most positive impact on your marriage? That's a great question, right? All right, what's the number one thing you could be doing that you're not currently doing that if you did it consistently would have the most positive impact on your health and fitness? All right, one last one. What's the one thing that you could be doing that if you did it consistently would have the most positive impact on your financial life? What is it? See, these questions shape your thinking. These questions move you toward optimal. These questions help you be more successful in every sense of the word. And that is important because your success blesses others.